Happy Thanksgiving. Woo! Kelsey, say hi. Thanksgiving in Colorado. Say hi.
Hello.
Hello. Dad, say hello. We're live.
What up?
We're just live. Babe, say hi.
Hello, hello, hello.
Mom, she did all the cooking, thank God. Because I was struggling. Couldn't even make the lasagna right, but it's okay.
This is Tashiana Blake, a 30-year-old devoted mother of 3 who would be killed by her husband after dinner for not apologizing on Thanksgiving Day. In the early hours of February 20th, 2021, a chilling 911 call would send the police department into a panic. A man confessed to shooting his wife, but what transpired next would leave the community in disbelief and horror. When officers arrived at the scene, they found Tashiana's lifeless body riddled with gunshot wounds to her head and body. But this was only the beginning of a story far darker than anyone could have anticipated. What made the tragedy even more harrowing was that it unfolded in front of their 2 young children, who would be left to carry the trauma of that night forever. Just hours before, the couple had seemed to be enjoying a typical Thanksgiving celebration with family and friends, a seemingly perfect holiday gathering. Little did Tashiana know, one simple act, her refusal to apologize, would lead to a violent end at the hands of the man who vowed to love and protect her. But how did things spiral so far out of control? How could the promise of a holiday filled with warmth turn into one of the most horrific moments of their lives? Let's rewind and examine the red flags, hidden signs that could have saved Tashiana's life.
Well, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I hope you all have a great time with your family. I'm glad my family's here. Woo! Kelsey, say hi. Kelly, say hi.
30-year-old Tashiana Blake was the epitome of vitality, a woman deeply rooted in her Jamaican heritage and wholeheartedly devoted to her family. As a mother of 2 young daughters, aged 7 and 5, her world revolved around them. In addition to her love for motherhood, Tashiana had built a promising career in real estate, a field that brought her both professional fulfillment and personal pride.
Hey everyone, welcome to my first virtual open house for 6728 Black Saddle Drive. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Tashi. I'm Melissa, and we're going to be showing you around.
Her social media pages were filled with snapshots of her success, her love for her children, and the joy she found in balancing work and family life. On the surface, it appeared as though Tashiana was living a dream, an ambitious, loving mother with a flourishing career. But beneath the surface, a darker reality was beginning to take shape. Tashiana's journey with her husband, Dermont Blake, began with love. Dermont, a Jamaican man serving as an active duty sergeant at Fort Carson military base, was a disciplined and focused individual. He had been in the Army for 4 years, excelling as a radio expert. To many, Dermont was the devoted husband and father, a perfect complement to Tashiana's radiant persona. Together they had 2 daughters and settled into a beautiful townhouse in Colorado Springs. From the outside, it seemed like the perfect family. Beautiful children, a successful career, and a supportive husband. Though their life seemed picture perfect, growing challenges began to surface, revealing a deeper truth as the years unfolded. By July 2019, Tashiana had made the difficult decision to file for divorce. Yet, despite the emotional toll, the couple attempted to reconcile, and the divorce proceedings were suddenly dropped in October 2019. Though the details of the case remain sealed, the abrupt halt hinted at deeper struggles, emotional turmoil, unspoken grievances, and a marriage that was unraveling at the seams. Court records painted a troubling picture of their relationship. Police revealed they had been called to the Blake household for domestic disturbances on multiple occasions. In one instance, after the divorce filing, officers responded to a verbal altercation between the couple. While Tashiana and Dermont both claimed that the argument was non-violent, an unnamed individual reportedly informed the police that Dermont had struck Tashiana. However, no charges were filed and the case was closed. Despite these allegations and recurring conflicts, Tashiana and Dermont continued their life together and the situation seemed to settle, at least outwardly. But the strain in their relationship was becoming unbearable. Tashiana's attempts to rebuild her life, both personally and professionally, became overshadowed by the emotional toll of living in a volatile and abusive marriage. Tensions between her and Dermont escalated, with arguments becoming more frequent and more intense. The once loving relationship was now a battleground, and Tashiana found herself caught in a cycle of conflict that seemed impossible to break. The cracks were widening, and the safety of her family and her own well-being was at risk. If only she knew it was closer than she imagined. On that tragic night of February 20th, 2021, the situation would escalate into violence. Around midnight, Tashiana's older daughter, who was 7 years old at the time, woke up to the sound of multiple gunshots. She later recalled hearing her father, Dermot, calling for her and her younger sister to come out of their room. When they did, they were met with a scene no child should ever see. The children saw their mother lying on the floor in the hallway, covered in blood. Tashiana's daughter later described how her father told their mother, Tashiana, to apologize. When Tashiana complied, saying she was sorry, Dermot shot her in the head. The children, frozen with fear, witnessed several more gunshots as their father continued to shoot their mother. Tashiana's older daughter claimed that her father stopped shooting when she begged him to stop, but the damage was done. In a tragic twist, the children had to witness their mother's horrifying death at the hands of the man they had once loved and trusted. The trauma these young girls endured that night would be unimaginable for anyone, let alone children so young. Their entire world was shattered, and their lives would never be the same again. But Dermot's next action was even chilling. After shooting his wife and mother of his children, he called 911, claiming that he had shot Tashiana and that she was a terrible person. By the time the police arrived, Dermot was already covered in blood. The officers immediately placed him under arrest, and he was charged with first-degree murder. Dermot was also charged with 2 counts of child abuse, as his 2 daughters were forced to witness the horrific crime. The case quickly gained national attention as people grappled with the senselessness of the crime. The investigation into Tashiana's death was thorough. The authorities combed through every detail of the case, reviewing evidence, interviewing witnesses, and examining the history of domestic violence in the Blake household. The police learned that there had been prior incidents of abuse in the relationship, with Tashiana having accused Dermont of physically abusing her in the past. However, the legal system had failed to provide her with the protection she so desperately needed. This would prove to be a crucial point in the case, as many wondered how the authorities had allowed such a dangerous situation to escalate to the point of murder. As the investigation continued, it was revealed that Tashiana had tried to seek help in various ways. She had filed a restraining order against Dermont in the past, but had ultimately dropped it, likely due to the ongoing emotional manipulation and control Dermont exerted over her. The complexities of their relationship, coupled with the lack of sufficient support from law enforcement and the legal system, played a significant role in the tragic outcome. It was clear that Tashiana's decision to stay in the relationship, despite the red flags and signs of abuse, had dire consequences. One of the most chilling aspects of the case was the chillingly cold confession Dermot made to the 911 dispatcher shortly after he had killed his wife. "I just shot my wife," he said, as if it were an everyday occurrence. His admission was followed by a strange statement: "She's a terrible person." It was a shocking and heartless response, offering little insight into the deeply ingrained issues that had led to such a tragic and irreversible action. The investigation focused on reconstructing the couple's relationship, and it became apparent that things had been unraveling for years. As more details of the couple's troubled marriage emerged, investigators learned that Tashiana had filed for divorce in 2019, but had eventually withdrawn her petition. Witness statements and police interviews painted a picture of a marriage that had become increasingly unhealthy. Tashiana had attempted to distance herself from Dermot emotionally, but it seemed that Dermot had a deep sense of control and possessiveness over her. Still, they continued to live together under the same roof. a facade that hid the underlying tension and anxiety that both parties were clearly experiencing.
To the outside world, she seemed to have the perfect life.
Now, court documents reveal dark moments before the murder of a Colorado Springs wife and mother, allegedly at the hands of her husband with their kids at home. KRDO News Channel 13 Sydney Stell picks up the story from there, live from the El Paso County Jail. Sydney.
Heather, 34-year-old Dermot Blake is sitting in a jail cell here tonight. It's where he'll stay through at least mid-December, accused of murdering his wife in front of their 2 children.
Completely shocked, overwhelmed a little bit walking and having them, you can't walk to your house right now, like it's not safe.
A neighbor of the Blakes told KRDO at the time she was barred from walking home and crossing crime scene tape. In their normally safe, quiet townhome, shots rang out. Tashiana did not survive.
In the early days of the investigation, the police worked tirelessly to gather evidence. As is often the case in situations of domestic violence, there were inconsistencies in the details Dermot provided to law enforcement. Dermot initially described the shooting as an impulsive act, but detectives were not convinced. The presence of the doorbell camera footage from the Blake household from the night of the murder showed Dermot walking around the house just before the gunshots rang out. The investigation revealed that he had shot Tashiana 6 times in a span of just a few minutes. The footage, combined with the testimony from the children who were forced to witness the shooting, painted a horrifying picture of a man who had lost all control over his emotions and actions. Tashiana's daughters, who were just 7 and 5 years old, were left to process the trauma of witnessing their mother's brutal murder. The trauma that these children had to endure would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The fact that they had seen their father, someone they once loved and trusted, commit such an act of violence against their mother left them emotionally scarred. As the police conducted their investigation, they also reviewed Dermot's history, looking for clues that might explain his violent actions. Dermot had served in the military for several years, but the authorities were keen to understand if his time in the army had played any role in his behavior. However, despite being a military man, there were no indications that Dermot had experienced significant trauma that might have led to such a violent outburst. His behavior seemed to be driven by an overwhelming sense of entitlement and control over his family, particularly Tashiana. The police also explored the possibility that the stress of military life had exacerbated Dermot's issues with anger. But it was clear that his history of abusive behavior had been a significant factor long before his time in the army. The trial, which was held in November 2022, was a tense and emotional process for everyone involved. Dermot Blake maintained his innocence, pleading not guilty to the charges of first-degree murder and child abuse. His defense team attempted to argue that his actions were not premeditated and instead were the result of a momentary lapse in judgment brought on by alcohol consumption. However, the prosecution presented compelling evidence to the contrary, painting a clear picture of a man who had lost control over his abusive tendencies and had ultimately taken his wife's life in a fit of rage. Despite the defense's arguments, the jury found Dermot guilty of first-degree murder and child abuse. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge also imposed additional sentences for the child abuse charges, ensuring that Dermot would never have the chance to harm his daughters again.
A Fort Carson soldier at the time booked into the El Paso County Jail on first-degree murder charges. He was charged with child abuse, too. Court documents show that the couple's 2 daughters, ages 5 and 7, spoke to police that night. They told them they heard shots and then they heard their mother telling them to come out of their bedroom. They saw their mom covered in blood in the hallway while their dad told their mom to apologize. They then watched their dad shoot their mom while she said she was sorry. Dermot Blake called 911 after the shooting. His 2 daughters were placed in the care of family as they mourned the loss of their mom. Now, Blake has been here behind bars ever since. He's expected back in court in mid-December. He'll remain here, though, without bond, at least until then. Live here at the El Paso County Jail, I'm Sydney Stell, KRDO News Channel 13.
The verdict brought a sense of closure to Tashiana's family, but the emotional toll of the loss would linger for years to come. Tashiana's 2 young daughters, now left without both parents, were placed in the care of their maternal grandparents. The emotional wounds left by the traumatic events of that night would take time to heal, but the love and support of their extended family provided them with the foundation they needed to begin their journey of recovery. Tashiana was remembered by those who knew her as a caring, vibrant woman who had a bright future ahead of her. Her passion for her family and her career in real estate had made her a beloved figure in her community. But despite her best efforts to build a better life for her children, she became another tragic statistic in the ever-growing epidemic of domestic violence. In the days following Tashiana's death, the many villagers rallied together to honor her memory and show support for her children. A GoFundMe campaign was set up to help the family with funeral costs and to provide support for the girls as they navigated their grief and trauma. Local residents, friends, and family members came together to mourn the loss of a woman who had meant so much to so many. For Tashiana's family, the pain of losing her would never fully subside. The knowledge that she had been taken from them so violently and so unexpectedly haunted them. Her bright spirit, her commitment to her family, and her love for her children were all taken away in an instant. The ripple effects of her death reached far beyond her immediate family, affecting her community, friends, and everyone who had known her. As the investigation closed and the court proceedings ended, the community reflected on the deep impact of this tragedy. The case highlighted the dangers of domestic violence, the importance of early intervention, and the need for increased awareness of the warning signs that often precede such tragic events. While justice had been served with Dermot's conviction, Tashiana's story remains a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of protecting those we love from harm. Tashiana's parents, overwhelmed with grief, often spoke about their daughter's kind heart and how she had always put her children first. Despite the emotional toll, her mother and father took solace in the fact that Tashiana had been a source of strength for her children, always striving to create a loving environment, even in the face of her own personal struggles. While the world had lost a vibrant and caring soul, the legacy of her resilience and love for her family would live on through her daughters. As time passed, her family and friends worked tirelessly to ensure that Tashiana's memory would not be forgotten. The aftermath of Tashiana's death also highlighted the importance of recognizing the warning signs of domestic abuse. Despite Tashiana's attempts to break free from her troubled marriage, her tragic fate underscored the fact that escaping an abusive relationship is never easy. For many victims, leaving an abusive partner can feel like an insurmountable challenge, especially when there are children involved. Tashiana's case further exposed the complexities of domestic violence, and it prompted many to reconsider the ways in which we as a society support victims of abuse. What do you think about it? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.